This is Erwin Lazar, President and Principal Analyst at Metrigy, and welcome to episode 38 of our Metrigy MetriSight video and podcast. I'm excited to be joined this week by Micah Singer, who is CEO of Kurmi Software. Kurmi is a leader in the unified communications and contact center management and provisioning space with almost 4 million users under management. They're an Avaya, Cisco, and Microsoft partner. In this episode, we'll get Micah's thoughts on the communications and contact center market and how management strategies are evolving to support hybrid work as well as migration to cloud-based communications. Micah, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Erwin. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here. Let's start with a little bit about yourself. I find it always useful to introduce our guests to our audience. Tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got involved in the communications industry.
Yeah, I mean, long story. I'll make it as short as possible. Didn't set out to be in communications. Was a psychology and political science major in college, but really was drawn maybe into the internet revolution and drawn into innovation. And so and telecom in the 90s and all the way through today is just it's such a hotbed of innovation. So much has changed, and it's about communication. So it's really fun. I started in international callback, which was a way for more international communications, and then got sucked into voice over IP and just the promise of communication outside of the PSTN and what that promised. And Kurmi has been really exciting because it's sort of, once all these new technologies get to a certain scale, it's complex, it's hard to manage, and Kurmi is another layer of innovation that I find really compelling.
So you came over to Kurmi about 8 months ago now, I think it was, to become CEO. What brought you in or what got you excited about joining Kurmi?
Yeah, and exactly that. I mean, the problem it's been about 8 months. I was on the board for 3 years before, so I was watching the company progress and really love the technology. And I really think that the problem that Kurmi's solving is a problem that's emerging and becoming larger and larger as there are more communication tools. So it was an opportunity, right place at the right time. It's an international company, but really with a strong foothold and origins in France. And I'm a huge Francophile. I've lived a bunch of years in France, and so the telecom technology innovation in France are a great blend. And it turns out I'm maybe the only candidate for the job in certain ways, but it's been a great fit.
Excellent. I assume you get over to France quite a bit.
Quite a bit, yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. And the company's expanded well beyond France now, but still about 2/3 of our force is in France. I'm there every month or 6 weeks, and it's not just Paris. I mean, France. It's the heartbeat of the company is in Brittany, where we do our R&D and some of our pro services, and that's where IT is. And so I get to actually travel around France quite a bit.
Excellent. So let's get into a little bit of the discussion about UC management and how that's evolving. So in our research, we obviously spend a lot of time going out, talking to end user organizations, gathering data from them. And we found, hybrid work is here to stay. Obviously, there's a lot of holy war battles now over whether or not people should come back to the office. But when you think about things from the management perspective, what is the challenges that you're facing and that you're solving with respect to supporting the needs of a hybrid workforce versus one that was predominantly either at home during the pandemic or predominantly in the office prior to the pandemic?
So hybrid work is, I love that word, and it describes a bunch of different things. I mean, this hybrid is in the office, at home, remote workers. That's, I think, how people use hybrid. Then there's systems that are on-prem, and there's systems that are in the cloud. And then it's just really hybrid, meaning my brother's an agronomist, so when he talks about hybrid, he talks about genetic crossing, different breeds, and sort of getting you the best solution you want of, in his case, plants, but in our case, communications. So every worker is unique. Just like when you surf the internet, Google throws you ads that are things you want to see, not that the person sitting next to you wants to see. Communication tools you use, if done right, are unique to what you need to use. So, it's not just here's a phone number, here's a phone, here's 10 features. Everyone has the features they like, but not only that, they have the different tools they like, whether it's ways for digital signing, someone does some like graphic design editing, people are using Canva. There's all these cloud tools. I mean, collaboration's expanded it out quite measurably, beyond, the document sharing, chat, libraries of emojis. I mean, these are all things that we each have preferences for. So the hybrid work for me is about getting each worker the tools that they want from an increasingly large selection of options in the communications field.
It makes sense. When you initially answer that question, you sort of talk about hybrid in multiple different ways. That it's not just hybrid work from the location perspective, but also where applications are living and what's on-prem, what's in the cloud, and what's potentially converged in terms of both being, delivering applications that are partially on-prem and partially in cloud, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And what the hallmark of this is, there are just more and more applications. So how do we chat? Is it just Teams? No, often we use 3, 4, 5 different tools for chat. So that has to be managed. Depending on what our role is, and especially in big companies, everyone has a different slice of what they do. So um, there's more and more and more great tools, which is more and more complexity, which is a challenge for IT managers and IT teams and the people who have to make sense of all this and keep us all happy as digital workers. So, this is where Kurmi comes in. We want everyone to have the tools that make them most efficient, that they like to use the most, that they're comfortable with, whether they're, my mother who's just learned WhatsApp yesterday, or the millennials who are using tools that pretty advanced, or people who don't even email anymore, because or Facebook is old school. This falls often to this IT admin group, who is Kermi's target audience or user of our technology. And so our job is to make their lives manageable, while letting them make the lives of their workforces they support, getting them exactly what they want to use.
Excellent. So in our research, obviously we see a lot of trend toward cloud, but also, still about a third of companies that maintain on-prem UC applications. The majority of those are planning on staying that way at this point. If they're on-prem still at this point in the life cycle, I guess, of cloud, that they probably have a really good reason to be there. So where does Kurmi fit in terms of helping companies with their journey to cloud, or supporting these hybrid deployment environments versus the previous we talked about, hybrid worker location?
Non-judgmental, I think, is what we are. So, every company is a bit different. There's different systems. There's that they use, like you said, on-prem or cloud. Their migration strategy can be, rip off the Band-Aid, or it can be more gradual. Larger companies are generally more gradual. Um, you know, Less and less of the inclination to impose on their workers, rigid time frames. So this flexibility is something that Kurmi has to support. So generally, you find, you mentioned Avaya and Cisco and Microsoft, which are 3 UC systems, UC and collab systems that we manage and provision. Often you'll find 1 or 2 or sometimes 3 of those all in one company, and many other systems for communication that are used. And but they're each separate vendors. They each have separate worlds. They each have separate conferences now you have to go to. But our goal is to make it so IT admins can manage all 3 from one place. We can say single pane of glass. One thing we say a lot is multi-vendor, because more and more that's become the standard rather than the aberration. So these IT organizations have to manage this complexity, which crosses brands and functions and departments, and Kurmi is there to help provision and automate those processes.
That'd be a welcome scenario to walk in and not, tell IT, well, you have to move to cloud. You can't continue to support the legacy environment you've got. But here, what we're going to do is allow you to manage and move at your own pace, or continue to support the different environment you have, right?
Absolutely, and in fact, I mean, what we work a lot with Cisco, and I think Cisco is and every company has their different objectives, but they're in the process of moving lots of on-prem systems to cloud, and um, for us, managing both, Cisco on-prem, Cisco cloud, and letting the organizations move at their own pace is important. But for Cisco, it's also important. I mean, as much as they want things to happen, they don't control the IT departments at all these companies, and they want to accommodate. So I talk about multi-vendor and cloud on-prem, but really even within one vendor, one big important vendor. This has been slow. I mean, Microsoft's been a bit faster with the move to Teams, and I think organizations have ripped the Band-Aid a little quicker there. But it's interesting to see it all, and to adjust to it. That's our role, and is to adjust to the requirements.
So, what are the challenges that normally bring customers to your door? Aside from the multi-vendor environment, what are the more specific operational management challenges that they typically have?
So multi-vendor, yeah. Uh, time use. As communication systems become more complex, there's more systems for IT provisioning administrators to learn. Um, they need systems that automate, so that simplify what they're trying to do on each system. Because a lot of it is replicated, or we call it packages. You have a package for a salesperson, maybe a package for someone who's a developer within a big company, or a package for a customer service agent. And so being able to simplify and then automate the provisioning of these different systems allows you to get work done quicker. We have I think on our website, we have a calculator that says something you save, like, I want to say 50 to 80% of the time spent provisioning can be saved, which, if you have 100 employees, it's not a huge deal, but right when you have 5,000 or 10,000 or more, which tends to be our sweet spot, time is really valuable. And as they say, it's money. But then also, the other thing is money is money. So managing all these users, there's a lot of inefficiencies if you don't have tools that let you see exactly what's happening. So your costs of licensing, of users, of unused users, of people who aren't with the company or on leave, or all these things, we let you keep a handle on all that and make sure your costs are controlled.
Makes sense. And we've seen this in our research. We published a study earlier this year, 440 organizations based in North America, Western Europe, Southeast Asia. And we found that those that were using third-party specialty tools for UC administration were seeing tangible benefits. So roughly about an hour savings in initial provisioning, 37-minute savings in terms of the time it takes to process, move, adds, and changes. So to your point, time is money, and time is time. And obviously, a lot of companies are dealing with limited IT staffs and IT resources and struggling to optimize their environment, right?
And below the surface, also, I mean, the two other things that go along with the time savings are, automation reduces errors.
Hmm?
So this, yeah, that's often hidden, but it's easy to make errors when you're building complex or provisioning complex systems. And then the other one we hear a lot about, and it's a little hidden, is um, if you don't have some system that simplifies, you need quite skilled workers. And as you're dealing with more and more communication tools, end up with silos of knowledge. So people who know how to provision on Microsoft or Cisco or Avaya or whatever systems you're using, and then when they go on leave or leave the company or things change, you're out of luck. You end up, so you need, it's not about replacing people. Generally, it's about making people more efficient and giving them tools. I use like a car analogy. if you had to go in the engine and the things you do with buttons inside your car on the dashboard and what that corresponds to what's happening in the engine, like we can't all be engineers and know how to do that. So there's a button for it. And Kurmi is, not to oversimplify it, but we are trying to simplify it, and we are creating buttons that make it easy to do these complex tasks.
So, what do you say to folks who, they say, you know what, I've got everything I need from my UC provider. I just use the Cisco management suite or Microsoft Avaya, et cetera. What do you see as the selling point that gets them to say, you know what, maybe I really do need a solution like Hermes?
You're saying that they're using a single vendor and they have pretty simple needs.
Yeah, or that's their feeling is that they can do everything they need to do just in the administration tool that's provided to them from the vendor.
I mean, that is great. I mean, then that's the ideal, and a lot of these for them, if it's that simple, but that seems like the exception rather than the rule nowadays, because and again, especially as you get into larger companies where
Yeah.
there's different needs. So then you say, well, we have 27 different types of packages or users and what they need, and depending on what country they're in or what level in the company they're at, or what again, what role they have. So size breeds complexity, and often that sort of means that the people who have the simpler needs are in the minority nowadays. But again, I mean, I don't want to. The goal's the same. The goal is to provision the users with the tools they need. Um, if companies have simple requirements there, and things like there's great systems like Microsoft has Teams admin portal, which is can do quite a bit. Um, Cisco has Control Hub, which is again is good for managing cloud Cisco solutions. So if you're just using a cloud Cisco solution, um, and delegation and other things, security aren't as important, then you shouldn't make your life more complicated.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask an AI question. And I think everything we do and publish these days, we have to talk about AI, right?
Yeah.
So, how do you see AI and maybe generative AI impacting what you're doing at Kurmi and the UC management space and contact center management space going forward?
Yeah, so Kurmi and some of the systems I mentioned, start as provisioning systems. So humans make decisions. Humans say, here's how we want to automate. Here's what we want to group things, and that's great. But the promise of AI in whatever field you're in is that um, by looking at lots of data, machines can help us make better decisions. So, so AI, things like AI ops, lets you know, like, is there a problem or are there conditions that could lead to a problem? Things like AI, reports, or AIs that look at reports of use that, can say, what are trends that we see happening? Where are places you can save money? AI can see things that humans can't see or don't have the time to see. So that's really important data. And then once you have that data, you need to do something with it, and that's where Kurmi comes in. So some of the things we've introduced, or we just saw a really cool beta where we look at all the data coming out of Microsoft Teams, license use in this case. And then we can make recommendations and say, hey, based on this, maybe you could recoup these licenses, or recoup these services associated with, downgrade someone from an E5 to an E3, or whatever kind of insight you can learn from the AI. Kurmi can say, take that information, then give you a button to click and actually make it happen in real life. So,
Wow.
so it's AI tells you what's great, and then systems like Kurmi are the interface to the machines that make it easy to actually take that AI information and not just say that's great to know, but we've done it.
I can tell you in our research, there's often very little insight or knowledge of what kind of licenses people have. And I mean, you think about in the history of the telecom space, how many people are paying for numbers and lines they're not using. Um, Even going back to the Centrix days of phone numbers you're not using and so on. So yeah, to be able to identify and make identify what's being used, how it's being
Yeah.
used, and hopefully make more intelligent purchasing decisions. It's another way of saving money, like you talked about earlier.
So I think that we talk a lot about provisioning,
Hmm?
and that's what and Kurmi does that. And then we also talk about, I think you said at the top that we're in the business of service management. And service management is something well beyond provisioning. I think it combines. I call it optimization. I mean, and so I think it's another way of saying service management, but it's provisioning plus it's cost management plus it's performance management, and all this information comes in from different sources, and a lot of it can be automated. I mean, and I'm back to the car analogy. I mean, your car is always telling you stuff because it's monitoring, and now there's a lot of computer chips in there, and so it's giving you information, and sometimes it's just doing things like if you brake too hard, it stops you from, it stops the brakes from putting you into a skid.
Yeah.
So great example. That kind of optimization is really exciting, and it's it's in business. It saves you money, it saves you time, it nets you better performance, and so that's where Kermi is well positioned to move to and starting to move.
Yeah, I like that analogy. It's giving you information that you can use to make more effective decisions, but then also automating where it makes sense and where you can trust the solution or the platform to handle automation, right?
Absolutely, yeah, and it's cool. I mean, and it's and we exist in an ecosystem. So we don't do we're not a monitoring company. There's actually a bunch of great companies that are well advanced in that field. Um, but there are ecosystem partners, and the data they produce is, we can help make it actionable for them. So it's we're we're symbiotic with these other systems, and we're downstream from systems like ServiceNow and ITSMs that, people open tickets, they want an answer, they does a call to Kermi, we provide them information, we let them make changes, and then it reports it back. So we're in the engine. We're
Very cool.
we're keeping track of that engine.
Excellent. So, putting your looking into your crystal ball, I guess, what do you see as priorities for the next 6 to 12 months? Where are you focusing your efforts at Kermi?
One of the things I mentioned is just proving that that we can convert data into action in Kermi in a ways that are beyond just basic provisioning. Um, One, two is integration is really important. So, I talked about the complexity of more and more systems. You know, because of where we're sitting, we have to be able to integrate better to and more easily to more and more subsystems that are out there, whether it's expense management systems or I don't know, systems for call recording or just other communication systems. So that the tools for integration for us are better APIs, which we've had APIs for a long time, but there's ways to simplify it, make it more accessible. Um, Better software development kit, SDK. So just a way to put tools into the hands of the enterprises and partners who we work with. So make it easy for them to do more and more complex integrations. I think that's where everything's moving. And then one thing we've been good at, and there's no stopping now, is customization. So large enterprises have a certain way of doing things, and um, it's like you said, if everyone was using one system and doing it simply, systems like Kermi might not be necessary. But because big companies have a certain way of doing it and want to keep doing it the way they're doing it, whether because they're stubborn or because it's great for their business, or whatever reason it is, usually it makes sense. We have to support that. So making customization easier on Kurmi is something that's we internally we call it simplification. So it's a good word, but that's really important. So making our software more configurable for end users and documenting it better and just making it more accessible.
Very cool. So as we wrap up, any closing thought, call to action that you'd like to suggest to our listeners, and where can they go if they'd like more information on Kurmi?
I think it's, if you're a bigger company, an enterprise out there with probably 2,500 or more users, and you're an IT admin and you're starting to see, that maybe some external system could help, I think it's worth having a demo. It's worth going to our website and signing up for a demo. It's Kurmi-software.com, Kurmi-software.com. And it can't hurt. Our sales process is extremely consultative, so generally we get to know you a little and and try to advise you on how our system might be useful, or maybe you don't need it. But I think it's good to explore this, and I think it's a trend. So like I said, as complexity arrives more and more with digital worker management, I think you should know about these things, whether you are ready to put one in place today, or it's something you need to have in the back of your mind for the future as the problems become more complex.
Excellent. Well, that wraps up our episode 38 of our MetriSight. I'd like to thank Micah for joining us. And as he mentioned, check out Kurmi at Kurmi-software.com. And if you like this episode, please share with your friends and colleagues. Please remember that we publish our MetriSight on a bi-weekly basis. So check out our archives on YouTube or on your favorite podcasting app. And with that, we'll close up. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Erwin.